What is up? Daniel here with the Virtual Robotics Studio. We're back to kind of do some of the finishing touches on our frame. We got to build our fuel mechanism and intake mounts. We got to get our belly pan going out of some polycarb. And there's one little piece that we need to finish up our battery mount. So we're going to get those cut and attached to the robot. But before we do, we're going to give another special thanks to Argosy. First, Cross the Road Electronics, West Coast Products, Aramco, and Team 302, Lake Orion High School, for hosting our studio. All right, let's start with the easiest piece. This is going to be, we have three sides. We sort of have a U that's making up our battery mount right now. We need one thing on the fourth side of the battery. You can make this out of pretty much whatever. If you use the regular 1x2 box, that's going to be fine. It's a little taller. It's going to make it a little harder to grab the battery to move it in and out. Or if you put it flat, it's going to take up more room on our belly pan where we want room for the electronics. So I'm going to make it out of angle. I just have this piece of angle. Again, this is sort of like whatever you got around is going to work. But this is a 1" by 1" angle. This is 1/8 inch wall thickness. Probably a 1/16 would still be fine, but I'm going to go ahead and use the thicker one just to make sure the battery doesn't move. And the other benefit to this is that the flat side, right? If we put the tall side against the battery, the flat side means we're going to have maybe not room to put stuff on the ground on the belly pan, but it's going to give our hands room to work. So it's going to be more room for the wires versus something like this where you lose all of that space. So let's do that one first. This one is going to be the easiest piece pretty much on the whole robot. Let's see, I'm going to cut it, I think, this way in my saw. This piece needs to be 6-ish inches long, like very much on the ish. So we're going to, actually, I mean, and you can do this with the calipers, right? Because calipers do go up to 6 inches, so you could scribe a 6-inch line. Actually, that's probably the easiest way to do it. But again, if this is 6 1/4 or 5 1/2, it's going to work. It doesn't have to be anywhere close. But sure, this is just as easy. So somewhere around here is going to be our 6-inch line. We'll mark that up. Get a quick little scribe line here. So that's enough for it to show up. You can see that in there. That looks good. And that's it. Cut it at 6 inches. And clamp it in. And of course, I need the other wall marked, so I'll just flip it around. It'll be fine. And again, in theory, there's a side that I care about. I'm going to put the saw blade to the outside of the piece because I'm saving the part that's clamped in. But also, I've told you this piece can be like easily 1/4 inch off and not have a problem, so it doesn't really matter. Let's get that clamped in, and let's make our cut. Cool, cool. Hit that with the file. Now this one, because of where it's going to sit in the robot, right? It's going to be here. The battery's going to be up against it. We're going to be reaching in and around it. So on this one, I am going to do my best to kind of just round over the corners so that, you know, when we reach in, it's not gonna poke or scrape as much. All right, and then make sure we get all the sides as well. In theory, the ones that are facing down don't need to be rounded, but I'm going to forget when we go to put this in the robot, so I'm going to round all 4 corners a little bit. Perfect. All right, and this one's going to be hard to mistake for something else because it is the only piece that looks like this, but I'll label it anyway. So this is going to be SKB 26 dash, this is 110 in the model. All right. Now, the next piece that we're going to make, there's a few different ways to make it. I'm going to do it the hard way. Hopefully, you get to do it the easy way. So what's going to end up happening is this piece is going to be in the robot, and our intake, fuel mechanism and the intake ramp are going to go up against this wall, and we're going to need to bolt it in place. Also, we're going to need to bolt down through this to attach to a second box that's underneath it. Well, if we leave this as a box, it is possible, but it means that all the bolting we have to do, we're going to have to reach inside the channel with our wrenches or whatever to be able to hold that bolt in place or the nut in place to be able to connect it together. That's kind of difficult. It's not pleasant, especially if you have to do it quickly. What's going to make this piece much, much better is if we take one of these walls off. If you imagine, instead of having all 4 walls, we got rid of one side and it was a channel. Now we can reach inside a lot easier to add those bolts and stuff, right? So if that wall's not there, we're pretty happy. So if you only have box, or you just have so much of this box that you'd rather make your own out of it, what we're going to do is we're going to cut this to length, and then we're going to basically run it down the bandsaw to take that back leg off. So when we're done, our box is going to be a little short. It's going to be 1/8 of an inch shorter in this dimension. That's okay. We're not worried about that. It's still, we have the holes that we're mounting to. It's still going to be big enough and wide enough, and that's going to work. Also, if it's easier for you, like if you don't have the saw that we have where we're going to try to run it down like that, you could cut it this way. Because we only need, what we need from this piece is we need 1 row of holes on the bottom, and we need the second row of holes on the side. So it is also okay to go ahead and cut like along this row of holes to open it up, and then that might make it easier to cut off the last leg when all is said and done. So we're going to end up doing all of those things, but first, let's mark it and get it cut to length. Now we have to follow the same rules that we followed on our last piece when we were doing that. One side, we want it to be a 1/2 inch from a hole to the edge, and on the other side, we're going to want it to be a 1/4 inch from the hole to the edge. And that's because when this goes down on the frame, we have to be able to dodge the swerve modules. There's a little bit of a rounded section of the swerve module that we have to remove. So let's go ahead and see, like, is this already a 1/4 inch to the edge? It is not. It is less than a 1/4 inch to the edge. Honestly, that's probably fine. If your hole looks good like this hole looks, like there's still some meat there, even if it's a little bit shorter, mine looks like it's about 0.2 or 0.19 to the edge. You could probably get away with that and use it, but I'll go ahead and we'll do the whole thing and get it all set up correctly. So that means this one is going to be a 1/2 inch in, and a 1/2 inch in from the edge, we know from the last video, is always going to go through the center line of the holes. So we'll color in the center line of the holes here. Next thing we know is that, you can go back to the last video where I struggled with math, but our hole is 0.196 in diameter. That means in radius, it's half of that, or 0.98. If we want to be a 1/2 inch from this hole to the line, but we can only measure from the inside edge of the hole, well, the edge of the hole to a 1/2 inch away from the part is going to be 0.402 inches. So this one is kind of the harder one to measure nicely, but we'll go ahead and go to 402 on the calipers. The nice part about this one, the other ones, right, when we were doing it, I was saying, okay, another piece is going to butt up right against the end of this. This one, it'll just overhang a little bit. So if you're off, doesn't really matter. If you're a little short, also doesn't really matter. But we can use the same technique we used before. This is at 0.402, which means the edge here should be at 1/2 inch, and I just need to go in a little bit. I need to tip it in a little bit so it's underneath where that line was. We'll bring a little square in here, scribe the line. And really, like I said, if you're close to, let's see, I'll go from 1 inch to the center of the hole. Do we believe that 1 inch to the center of the hole is a 1/2 inch? Yeah, I believe that. That's close enough for what we're doing here. So that one looks good. You know what? We need to make 2 of these pieces. So depending on what you have left or what of box that you're making this out of, you can just cut one and then move on to the other one. Or basically mine looks the same on both ends, so I'm going to measure the other end and I'm going to work on it. Now this piece, when all is said and done, is going to be 8¼ inches long. So if your piece is 17, 18 inches long, then that's enough to make both. All right, let's mark the other one in the same way. We know we're going to cut basically through the center of this row of holes here. Right on, and we get to the edge. And go down fine with that. And that looks pretty close to the center. All right. Then I said 8.25 inches, right? So what we want to do is let's get our tape measure kind of on the hole. And then we're going to go to 8.25. So 8.25 should be halfway in between. That is not the right side of 8. I think this is the working upside down thing. All right, 8 and a little bit more, 8.25 will be in between those two holes. All right, that looks good. So we know our second hole is going to be somewhere in that neighborhood. All right, and then for the 1/4 inch off the edge of the pieces, in the last video, again, we did all of that math, but we want to set our calipers to 152 for that, 0.152. And this one, you can be a little shorter, but you should try not to be longer. Because again, this is where it's going to get close to colliding with that swerve module. All right, so this is my piece. I'm going to go 0.152 from the edge here. We'll get it to the highest point on the circle. Get ourselves a little mark. Get the scribe tool in that mark and scribe. Okay, that looks good. Again, we can sort of like sanity check. Does that look like it's about 1/4 of an inch away from the center of the hole? I would say, yeah, I'll believe that. All right, let's spin this around and repeat that same marking because we're making 2 identical pieces here. So let's get this in. See where that was lined up. And once again, it's going to be about 8.25 inches total, so 8 1/4. I got the right side of the 8 line this time. All right, and then I'm still set at 152 on my calipers, so let's get that little mark. Scribe in there. All right, and we're good. We have all 4 of our marks. Let's get these cut. Okay, and want the blade to be outside of the line for this one. And this is our 1/2 inch from the nearest hole. Remember, this one can be a little too long, a little too short, no big deal. Let's make the cut. All right, slide it over. We'll get our next line here. I will also mention, kind of as I'm lining this up, I do have, this is out of 1/8 inch. I know when we were doing the frame, I was like, I got the wrong size. Make sure you use 1/8 of an inch. And I have the right size for this piece. I had a little piece left for this. All right, so we'll get right on the end of that line. Remember, if anything, a little too short is okay. A little too long is the scarier side for this one. This is our 1/4 inch to the edge. Let's make our cut. All right, slide over to our next one. And this one we need to be on the outside of the line. Looks pretty close. And put it off so it sits flat there. We're going to flip it around and get the other side. Tiny little cut. That looks pretty good. That was crooked. That was for sure crooked. All right, now we're good. All right, let's do it. All right, I'm gonna just get these filed enough so the edges are clean because like I said, we have a bunch more cuts to do on this piece. Now, the order of operations for this piece will depend on whether you're doing it as a box or whether you're doing it from channel. So I guess first thing is let's label this, or these two pieces. I guess we should check the dimension first. So 8 1/4, please. 8 1/4, yeah. 8 1/4. That one's maybe a hair short. Gonna be fine. That's what you talked about. Don't have to be, these ones definitely do not have to be perfect. All right, these are SKB 26 dash. We got 107. SKB 26-107. All right. If I had channel, right, we have one more cut that we have to make on these, and that is the side that is close to the edge. So this is our 1/2 inch side. This is our 1/4 inch side. The 1/4 inch side also needs one more cut to clear, like a little diagonal cut on this corner to clear. And that's not exactly where that goes. We'll measure it out and do it correctly. But doing that cut when it is still a box is going to be easier than doing that cut when it's a channel. But because some of you might be working from channel and some of you might be working from box, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark both, but I will cut one when it's a box and then turn it into a channel. The other one I'll turn into a channel first and then come back and cut it into, cut the angle off afterwards. So you can see both ways that it works. All right, so this really isn't a specific dimension. It's not super critical. But when this goes down into the frame, there is, like if these were on our sides like this, say, this is the outside of the robot. So we have our swerve chassis kind of in this corner right here. And that swerve chassis has a little bit of a curved plate that comes across here and comes through. And so in order for us to not hit that curved plate, we have to have a little diagonal cutoff. Now here's the cool part. You can do it on literally either corner because you can flip the part over and it's going to be fine. Now, when we turn this into channel though, does it matter? No, it still doesn't matter. Like even if this is channel, we can attach it this way on one side and this way on the other side. So we're still totally fine. All right. And the dimension that we're looking for is, I think I have a stupid dimension there. I think I put 0.43625 inches in from the corner in both directions, and that's where we want to scribe it. Let's see how that looks on an actual piece, though, because we could always change it if we had to. So 436, whatever. And if you have calipers, that's great. If you don't have calipers, that's, we'll do it a different way. But essentially, we're looking at going in 0.436 something into here. So that would be like if we have a mark there. Let me do our layout ink so it's visible on the cameras. All right. So basically what I'm saying is if we do a mark here, in, so we got our little mark right there. And if we do it from this direction in from the edge of the piece, we've got our mark there. And then if we connect those two diagonals together, that is where we want to cut. And that basically, the idea here is if you look at the dimension, right, between this and the edge of the piece, I'm trying to sort of maintain that dimension. That's kind of how I chose this number. So like if we cut on this angle, the distance here stays about the same as there. You could cut a little bit more, still going to be strong enough. We have multiple places where we can attach this. Cut a little bit less, and I think it still clears. And if you cut a little bit less and it doesn't clear, well, then we take the piece over to the grinder or the file, and we lower it down a little bit more. So that is the cut that we're trying to make. Now, Let me go ahead and actually do a layout line for that. I guess we'll go this way. So if I put this right on the corner edge there and we do our best to line it up, that looks reasonable. Like I said, again, if it's not perfect, that's okay. So that is one of them. I'm going to mark the other one exactly the same way. But our next step then is, with a saw like this, this is a 45-degree cut. So you could adjust the angle on your saw to get a 45-degree cut and put it in and chop it. That's fine. I'm just going to do both of these cuts over on our vertical bandsaw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the second one identical to the first one. Probably clean this table up, and then I'll meet you over at the vertical bandsaw. All right, I'm over here. I have both of my pieces marked the same. Remember, they can be on the same corner even though when they go in the robot, they're going to be flipped over because in theory, right, like that cut is going to take the corner off the top and the bottom edge, so it's not a problem. I do want to mention one more time before we cut, make sure you're marked on the side where the hole is closer to the edge. So this is the side where it's a 1/4 inch to the edge of the piece. The other side, the hole, there's more space, and you can even see there will be a little bit of a hole left on that side. That is the 1/2 inch side. So make sure you're on the shorter side. That's the side that we need the cutout to be on. All right, so the first, we'll do a cutout when it's boxed still, and that should be easy to do. Let's raise up our guard here. And really, all we're going to do is just make that cut. Keep it flat on the table when you're doing it. That should make the cut on the top and the bottom really close to the same. And let's go for it. All right, that looks pretty good. I think I wiggled on the cut a little bit, but nothing that some filing or some grinding can't take off. Now, the way that I cut this though, there is a really sharp edge here in the middle. So either you need to spend a lot of time filing that down, or you could, in theory, go back to the saw and you could cut right along that line in until you break through that edge. And then you won't have that sharp bit that's still there. Now, don't do that if you're going to turn this into channel. That's only if you're going to try to use this as a box and reach inside to do stuff. Then you really don't want the sharp edge. But if we're going to turn it into channel, that's the side we're cutting off anyway. So we don't need to worry about fixing that. All right, let's go ahead and turn it into channel now. This is a little bit tricky. So what I'm going to basically be doing is we're going to cut along the entire piece this way, just inside the edge of the wall. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Now, if you have a saw that's tall enough to go in this way, you could try that. If you wanted to do that with a hacksaw, you might be able to do that. A lot of times, if you put the hacksaw inside here, and this is clamped down, you can keep the hacksaw right against the edge of the wall when you're cutting. Actually, in that case, what I would do is I would go against the edge of the short wall, and it would cut down this way. So you have the full 1 inch. By cutting it this way, I'm not going to be 1 inch across anymore. Again, we're going to lose that little bit of wall thickness. But I think there's no good way for me to make that other cut in, just because it's too tall for my bandsaw. And there's no like even angled, right? I'm not gonna get enough done that flipping it around is gonna help. So mine is gonna be shorter, that's okay. Again, if you buy the channel right off the bat, yours is gonna be perfect. So this, again too, like I'm gonna do my best to cut a straight line here, but if it's not, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. Just make sure you have enough meat around the holes where we're gonna mount it, and it's gonna be fine. All right, let's do the best we can. So I'm gonna look down the inside to get stuff lined up. And actually, I'm gonna start on the side without the cutout as well. that looks pretty good. The long edge here to file. Okay, so here's the keys, right? We have plenty of meat here. So those holes are not in the center anymore. We knew that was going to be the case. But it's not like that hole is close to the edge. In fact, our front hole is closer to the edge that we cut here than to this edge that we cut. So that's okay. Obviously, it is now narrower than the 1 inch that it started, right? But still strong enough, still has the holes in all the places we need. And this way, you didn't have to buy a whole 47-inch piece of C-channel for just two 8.25-inch brackets. Or if you just have a ton of this material lying around. So you just get a little bit off this edge done. Now, this one, we said we would cut it to be channel first, and then we'll come back and do our marking. Now, if you buy the channel, right, that's what I'm replicating, is if you buy the channel, it's going to be 1 inch wide. So when I make my cut, I'm already marked based on it being the 1 inch wide. I'm going to actually be taking away some of that line, some of that cut that we're going to do afterwards. So my line will be a little bit different than yours, but if you're doing it out of 1 inch channel, just mark it the way that I said, make that cut, and you're done. But I'll turn this into channel just so you can see us making that diagonal cut as a channel instead of as a box. And actually, it's the plate side where you can tell how well you did. I got a little bit of a lip on this edge, so I got a little offline at the very end. All right, now we have our, let's pretend like you bought it, and this is the C channel. Now, I think if you buy this stuff as channel, it also is going to be, I think it was 0.09 inches, not 0.125. Still plenty strong. Still, I recommend doing that because it's easier, but it'll be a little bit thinner wall than what I'm dealing with here. Should not really affect this cut. So now we're going to do the same cut, and we're going to do it basically all the same ways as the box, except this end is going to be open when we do it. So it'll be even faster. Yep, that was it. That's how easy that cut is going to be if you start with channel. So we can file it to just sort of flatten that cut out a little bit. I know I made a little bit of a bump there, but that is looking pretty good. We got our two pieces. They are lined up. Those cuts look about the same on both. Again, this is just clearance cuts, so if they're off a little bit, again, we're just going to see if it fits. If it doesn't fit, before we mount it, we'll take it out, we'll file it some more, we'll grind it down. All right, these both look good. I have a little more filing to do. I'm going to get them filed up. Going to get this area cleaned up, and I'll see you back at the other table. All right, we got all the parts out for our next cut, but I'll just mention these are finished, all filed, cleaned up. Edges feel good, no burrs. I got lucky because I didn't even bother checking, but my labels were on the side I didn't cut off. If you happen to cut off the side with your part labels, just you can rewrite it on the other side. These are the only two channel pieces that go on this robot, so unless you're also working on other stuff where you might have similar looking pieces, it's probably fine. You're not gonna lose track of them. But I still would label it if you're not ready to use them right away, just because you won't mix it up for another part, but somebody might see this and be like, that doesn't look like a part of the robot, that looks like scrap, and get rid of it. So if it has the part number on it, that should stop that from happening. All right, I'm gonna set these back here. Next up, we need to make the belly pan. So this is polycarb. This is 1/8 thick polycarbonate. Make sure you get polycarbonate and not plexiglass. Plexiglass is a lot weaker and will shatter. And this should be the exact same material that you're using for the hopper pieces that we're going to make later. So same material. You might need to get a little bit more of it. We'll go back and we'll look and see if you can fit it on a 2x4 sheet or not. my piece is a little bit longer than 2x4. I think I'm like 30 and a half by 24 or by 48. Sorry, I don't know if you can fit it on a 24 by 48 sheet. Mine is 48, but I have this little section over here that's a little bit longer, that's 30 and a half, and that's going to help out quite a bit. Now this needs to fit the bottom of the robot. Our robot was 30 inches wide, so I'm going to be doing one this direction that's 30 inches wide. And then in the other direction, it's going to be 17.25 inches long. So that's what we're going to mark. We're going to cut out one rectangle that's 30 by 17. And then on the front, because we have to stop before we get all the way to the front of the robot, because we need to leave room for the balls to pass in an intake, and we can't go into the front swerve modules. So the front is just a straight cut across, but on the back, we need to make cutouts for the swerve modules. And there are a couple different ways you can do that. I'm going to do it what I think the easiest way is, but maybe not the best, but I will mention what I think the best way is to do that. All right, so first things first, I'm going to go ahead and mark my 30 inches here. So if I come in from the edge to 30, you know what? I think I want to mark from this edge. Something tells me this edge is straighter than that edge. I think I cut that edge. So we'll measure in 30 inches from this edge, which is going to be just about to the end. All right, and if this is a little bit too long, it's annoying because it's going to stick out past your robot. If it's a little bit too short, that's okay, as long as you still have enough meat to get past the holes where we're attaching stuff. So let me get another line at 30 here. All right, and what we can do, I've got this big square, so I need this a little bit off the edge of the table here for this to work for me. We'll see if I think this edge is square, so I think a combination of this and checking my two marks, we should be good, because my marks were a little thick, to be honest. So it looks like we want to be somewhere around here. That first one, I think, was in the middle of the point there. So that looks pretty good. So I'll go ahead and do a line. All the way along here. That should be about 30. And just quickly double check that. Looks like 30 is roughly to the middle of that line. And 30 on this side is also roughly to the middle of the line. So that looks pretty good. Looks pretty straight. All right, and then the next one was 17.25 inches in from this edge. So let's see, let me get this off the edge here. All right, 17.25, 17.25 inches. 17.25 inches, so like right about there. And that's going to be, this one also can be a little longer or a little shorter. Not a ton longer or shorter, but you got a little bit of play as well. If it's too short, we might have a hard time picking up one of the holes. If it's too long, it might hit something. Yeah, it might hit the swerve module. So, all right, that's 17.25. Let's go ahead and line up on it. All right, either my marks aren't good or this edge isn't square, and I don't know what to believe. So, you know. Guess I'll trust my marks. And then we can check it. All right, so 17.25 is what we're looking for. This is actually, okay, that's slightly past 17.25. This end is 17.25. All right, so I need the line to disappear on both of my cuts. If the line is gone on both of my cuts, I should be good. All right, well, you know what? I guess the first cut is going to be this one, and we will just rip it all the way down, and then we'll turn it and take this last little bit off here. So let me get some clamps. Help hold this in place. And for this piece, because it doesn't, I mean, it's nice if this is a straight edge, but it really doesn't matter too much about this, the size of this one. So I'm going to go ahead and freehand cut this with the circular saw. You might be better off, like, again, all circular saws or whatever sort of saws like this you have, the edge, right, is a set distance away from the blade. So if you had something that you put there, you could run along that, like sort of as a fence, as a guide to make the cut. So, I could take this and try to clamp it the right distance over and make that cut, and I will do that a lot. I might do that when we do all of the other hopper parts. But for this one, I'm going to just go ahead and freehand cut it. So we'll just do our best to stay on the line here, and we need the line to more or less disappear. Seemed pretty good. You can see I have a little bit more marker left on one side than the other. So might have cut a little bit crooked. Should still work. We can check it out and see how it looks. So this edge is 17 and actually just over a quarter, maybe a 32nd too wide. That's going to be fine. And this edge is 17 and a quarter. So that one is a little bit too long. I think that was at the end when I couldn't see behind the saw anymore. So let me clamp this back up, and I'm just gonna take a little bit more off that edge. Get rid of the rest of that Sharpie line there. Let's make sure we're off the table here. So I should have clamped the fence on and used the guide. But mistakes were made. All right, so I'm going to come in against the, oops. Okay, we had some plastic stuck in there. All right, I'm going to start against the edge here, and I'm going to just kind of make sure I take the rest of that line off as we go. I think that was better. I want to say that it was easier for me to see that when I didn't have to stand on the side to support the edge that we were cutting off. But, that is 17 and a quarter. And this end is still 17 and a quarter. That's perfect. We fixed it. All right. And then our 30-inch situation that we have to cut here. So once again, we will clamp it up. Now this one's a little weird because I know I need room for the saw to go past. So I don't think I can put a clamp on that side, but I'll put a second clamp on this side, which should stop it from rotating. Yeah, it's still pretty secure. All right, and then let's go ahead and make this cut. And remember, we want to lose this line, and if we lose a little bit extra on the line, that's okay. This can be a little shorter than 30. Should not be more, though. Well, we're going to measure it. The cover that I marked on started peeling up immediately, so it was hard to follow the line. But we want to see 30 or less. That is pretty much right on 30. And on this end, we are a little under 30. So I cut that one, again, maybe a 32nd, maybe a 16th too far. That is going to work for us, so awesome. Okay, and now, with this piece, our final piece here, we need to clean this off a little bit, the edges. Do we need to do that now? No, we can move on to the next step. step, which is we're going to mark. So this is the front of the robot. Say this is the back of the robot. We now need to take out these two corners in order to clear the swerve drive modules. Okay, and it turns out you need on the edges about 7 inches in order for it to clear the module. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a couple marks at 7. And again, this is, if it's a little bit more, a little bit less, I think it works. More is always OK. That just takes away some room for us to mount our electronics. If you go more, our plate gets a little smaller. All right, so another one at 7. And then if I go in this way at 7 as well, 7 and 7. All right. Now I know I cut this edge, so I definitely don't believe that that edge is straight. So we'll trust our 2 marks here. And then one of these edges might be straight, but we'll go with the marks again. And again, if you're trying to be very accurate, make sure the outside edge or the inside edge of your Sharpie line is where you want it to be. I'm telling you, this one, it doesn't have to be perfect, but looks like we're about 7 to the middle of that line, and this one we're 7 to the outside of the line. So basically, if I remove the lines, we're going to be good. Now, we could cut this corner out, and that will work fine. And in fact, that is the easiest way, right? Because we're just going to cut in, stop when we get close, cut in, stop when we get close. Just twist the thing, break it out, and file the corner down. And that's only 2 cuts. If you prefer, if you want to save some room, you can look kind of at your modules and see what you need. But something like this, well, that should have been a 45-degree angle. Something like that would be OK. You could do a cut in, a cut on the diagonal, and a cut in from the other side. And that would get you a little bit more room to mount stuff. I don't hate having some extra room here because it might help you reach up and grab things, or might help you reach up and get access to parts of the swerve module. So that's kind of up to you. I'm going to stick with a straight 7-inch cut on each corner because I think that is the easiest way to go about it. So let's go ahead and mark the other side with our 7 inches. All right, 7. So I'm going to do the outside of the edge of the line at 7 because that's how I did it on the other side. And then this way, again, outside. 7, outside on the 7. Go ahead and line up the straight edge. Again, if you don't have a giant, what is it, drywall square, a giant T-square, you can just use any piece of metal as a ruler. And in fact, 7 inches short enough, you can just use a regular ruler as a ruler, and that would get the job done. All right, and our other one here. Looks good. Just really quickly, we'll check this. Yep, to the outside of the line. Looks like to the outside of the line. Looks like to the outside of the line. And this one is, yeah, OK, like just a little bit past the outside of the line. That's going to be fine. All right, so now we're going to have to make 2 cuts. We're going to have to cut in. And then we'll probably change the setup here. So where do I want this to make my cuts? Do I want to cut in? Yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to go here. These clamps on. All right. And so I'm going to be watching on the side where it's cutting, and I'm going to try to stop when I get to the corner. Another thing, too, is I'm cutting farther off the edge of the table on this one. And I've just decided that's probably a bad idea. That's not the way to teach you. So if you let this bend when you're cutting, that is going to give the saw a chance to bind up. It might catch the polycarbonate, and even though it's polycarbonate, it might shatter it. if you're cutting through the area where it's bent. So the right answer is probably to move this off the side here. So we're cutting right close to the edge of the table, but not into the table, and that's going to give it less flex when we do this. So that is probably a better choice. Of course, if you have experience using the circular saw, you probably can do it the other way, which I think would be a little bit easier and a little bit faster to do. All right, let's cut along this line. Remember, we want the line to disappear. Okay, and I'm watching on the side. I just got to the edge, so I stopped cutting. Now, of course, the blade is a circle. It's not straight up and down. If you have a jigsaw, you can go right to the corner and you're good. In this case, I had to stop just a little short. There's one more trick too, which is you could put a drill bit, a mark for a drill bit here and drill in, and then you're cutting into the drill bit hole, which will give you a nice radius there as well. That works great if you want to do the extra time to do that. I don't think, again, it is going to affect anything functionally, but it would be a little bit cleaner that way. So not a terrible idea. All right, looks like I have to cut this one this direction because that's the side it's marked on. Clamp on there, and one on over here. All right, and same thing when I get to the edge, the corner of the square, I'll just stop cutting. All right, and this is still, you can see, still kind of on there. But if I just rip it off, it's fine. Now, there is a little bit of junk in that corner. That's another reason why really the drill bit is probably a better way to do it. But we can just hit that with a file. And it is gone. So now we're all right there on the corner. One side done. Let's flip it around and do the other side. So this one, I got to put both clamps on this side, which will be fine. It won't move too much. Okay, and this one looks like a left-handed cut where I can't see the saw blade very well. All right, we'll be fine. I had to go back and start again because I cut a little bit too far out. So that first bit is a little too far out, but it'll be okay. And then, let's see, we need to be this way so that the big piece stays on the table at the end. Right, and if you end up cutting or having to be in a spot that you're not comfortable with, you can always flip the thing over, mark the other side, and cut from there. All right, and let's do this one. Cool, we'll rip that out. And do the filing. Looks good. And then I've got this other sharp part where I restarted. So I'm going to hit that with a file too until it's not a sharp edge. Cool. And if you have multiple files to choose from, you should use the coarsest file you have. This one was a little bit fine for a job like this. coarser is going to do a better job of getting through the plastic. All right. Last thing we want to do on this is, last two things we want to do on this is, well, let's deburr the edges. I really like using the deburring tool because I feel like when you drag it down along the edge, you get these really satisfying like curly cues. But it also gets the whole edge really nicely, and the flexing of the polycarb is not as big of an issue. So we'll go down the long edge, flip it over, go down the long edge on the other side. All right, and then this one, and this one. Okay, and then I got to get this side of this corner here. Seems pretty good. Okay, this one. That was where I did my little step, where I cut, so it got caught on that step. That makes sense. I was confused for a second. And get the top here. And then this side is the last bit. All right, so this is cleaned up. This part is ready to go. The last thing you could do, if you feel any of these corners are like sharp, you could, just round them off a little bit, 45 them. If they don't feel sharp, you're probably fine. And that is it. So this piece is ready to go now. Our belly pan is ready to go. I'm going to clean up all of this plastic mess, and then we're going to come back and actually get all of these pieces attached onto our robot. All right, we brought the robot back. We got our chassis. And I think we're going to now attach our SKB 26107s. These are the pieces that either you bought C-channel or we turned the box into C-channel to be able to use. And these are going to go at the front of the robot here. So we have this connection that we never made, right, between these two pieces. And the idea is this piece is going to sit on top of here. And that's going to give us the extra holes we need up here to be able to attach the intake when we do that, the fuel mechanism. But it'll also stretch back far enough to attach the ramp and then attach to this crossbar here. So I think this one, if you cut this down, right, we talked about you could cut this through the third row of holes here in order to have an angle instead of a channel. You might be able to fit a riveter in that 1-inch gap if you do it that way. But since we kept ours as easy as possible and left it as C-channel, we're going to have to use bolts for this. So we want to bring the bolts up from the bottom. So I think we want to do something to prop this up. I think it's getting harder and harder to tip it on its side without it falling over. So I'll kind of get a little extra piece of metal here, prop it up a little bit. And we're going to be using those same these are the 2.5-inch long button head bolts that we were using before, and then the same nylock nuts. And of course, you'll need a 3/8 wrench and a 1/8 Allen wrench to go with it. What you want to do, though, is if you kind of line up, we have whatever the back hole is here on our whole thing should line up with the hole on our cross member here. So we can, let me see if I can find the right hole. So we can start out with a bolt popping through there. And what we want to do is, when you line this up, if you rotate this in, kind of while holding everything together, what we're looking for is, on the front here, it gets really close to this cutout, this curved cutout of the swerve module. So before we attach any bolts, let me just grab a second one. And the idea is we want to make sure that we have cut, because we trimmed this corner, we want to make sure we cut enough that it clears and we're able to attach this in there without hitting. So basically, if you take another bolt and run it up anywhere through any second hole, that's going to basically set the location of this piece. So if you can do that and it's not hitting, and you got just a little bit of gap here, between the swerve module and the channel bracket that we're putting in, then you're good to go. So then I'll go ahead and get the back one started. So you can just get nut started on there by hand. And this is one spot where if you have, instead of these 2.5-inch long bolts, if you have a 2 1/4, I think it would work here. Let's see. Oh, there we go. All right, I'm going to get a second one started. And what we're going to do with the second one is I'm going to basically want to put it in the hole that's right next to. Actually, if we put it there, we're going to have to move it. So I'm going to go about, well, if you look at the bottom, all right, I got to move this so you can see the bottom too. All right, let's see if we can get it to stay tipped up here. Careful with your wires. If I put this, okay, it's staying if I'm careful. All right, so on the bottom here, we're going to run the second bolt basically as far as we can go. Now, unfortunately, right, like the module comes in at some point, so this hole is open, but the bolt head won't fit past. So I'm going to go down one more, and I think this is the farthest forward position that I can attach this. So we'll be looking at a position like that. And then it's going to be a little tricky here on the top to get the nut started. So that's a couple different ways you can do that. I find the easiest way is to just kind of reach in there. Well, actually, it's loose enough now that I can almost just put it on normally. But, all right, let's try maybe this direction and see if we can see behind the channel here. So we're trying to get to the bolt inside here. There we go. All right. Get these wires out of the way. So if you can just reach into here and get it going, that's great. So I find that if you can like get the bolt started, so it's like poking through, and then pull it back down just so it's just below the surface. If you put the nut flat on the thing, you can sort of slide it in with your finger until it is on top of where that bolt was going to go. And then if you twist the bolt instead, you just have to hold the nut in place, then that will get it started. So now attached on there, then we can get in there with the wrench from some angle. And whoop. And then we can start tightening. Let's see, actually here, now I want to tip it up. Okay. So now that I'm started there, then it's just a matter of keeping the wrench on it and tightening down on this one. Now this front one here that we're putting in, we are not going to have to take this one out. And we have the other bolt started. So you can go ahead and make this one all the way tight. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and tighten, there we go, the other one that we had started here. Okay, this one we'll have to take out probably, so we just want to be a little, we can be a little looser on that one. We don't have to make it super, super tight. All right, so that's one side. Set it down here. And now we've got to do the same thing on our other side here. And I wonder if it'll be, is it easier to start with this front one? I'm not sure. But let's see. We can kind of do the same thing. The farthest forward hole that we can use, I think, is this one. Nope. It's this one. All right. So from the top, we have to leave kind of 4 holes here. From the bottom, you can tell because it's the closest you can get. And then again, we can drop this on. You have a little bit more, if you do this one first, you have like a little bit more flexibility here. So you might be able to just kind of bend that out enough to reach in and get it going. So if that method works for you, go for it. I'm going to once again drop that bolt head just below the surface, and then slide the nut over the hole, holding onto it with my finger, and just get it started that way. All right, so that one is started. And then, well, I guess we'll tip it up again. Watch my wires. It just like barely balances here still. All right, and then we've got that bottom hole here. I know it's there somewhere. There we go. All right. So you can get through that bottom hole. All right. And this one's easy. Well, I can probably set it down for this part. All right, then we just want to get that nut started on there. Okay. And then same step as before. Let me see. Once again. Now maybe the propping up will work. All right, so I can get the wrench on here. All right. And then the other one, we're just gonna hope for the best on. All right. There we go. And this front one, again, you can make all the way tight. One little bit more. All right. Let's lower this down for a second. Okay, so now those are on, and this beam is now kind of secured to the front of the robot. Our front corners are now kind of connected back. So everything should be more or less locked in place. So one of the things we can check now is this gap in between our two channel pieces here needs to be just about 18 inches. Should be more or less exactly 18 inches. So my front one is a little short of that. Hard to get a tape measure in here. I'm just under 18 inches. And what you can do if that happens is you can feel, I have a little bit of a gap here. I can feel if I press in, it does move a little bit, so that's going to adjust it some. And that's basically the only way you're really going to be able to adjust it much. But we want to make sure that you're at least close to 18 inches, because when you go to bring the fuel mechanism in, that's kind of the spacing that we need here. Once we attach the floor on the bottom, it's going to be hard to make any further adjustments. So pushing on that seems to have gotten me right back to 18. So I think I am good here. The back is right about at 18 as well. So it looks like I'm in a good position to try to attach the floor, the belly pan. Let's see now. Well, we've kind of not done this yet, but let's see what happens if we try to put it on upside down. Guess it's not too bad. Dump all these wires to the inside here. All right, and then I'll get our belly pan piece that we made. And you could peel off the coating if you haven't already. In fact, you will need to. One of the things about this, the way we're doing this belly pan, is we have to pick up the holes that are on the frame, but we have to do that while drilling through the plastic first. So if you can't see through the plastic, it's going to be hard to get that to line up. All right, so this is going to sit with your cutouts, your square cutouts, should be around the back swerve modules, and then the straight across section should be, by the open section here on the front. And what we want to try to do is basically line up, if you line up the back on the back edge of your robot, as long as the rest fits, right? We're basically trying to line up the sides and line up the back edge. And as long as it fits in the space, then we're good. If it doesn't fit in the space, then you will have to take it out and you'll have to trim it down a little bit. So right now mine, I have to push the back kind of all the way forward. It's sticking out just a hair down here. So I might need to file that. I might not. It can stick out it can be just a tiny bit past the edge and the bumpers will still clear. But if it's sticking out at all, you might have to go back and cut it. My sides look really good. I guess, yeah, so this back corner here, for me, is sticking out past the edge up until about here. So this whole area for me is just a little bit too long. So I'm going to take that over to our grinder and just sand it down a little bit. See how this is going to work. Yeah, so I should be able to get in there to go. So let's just do that. I just have to take a little bit off, so not a big deal. Just a touch more. All right, let's see where that gets us. After grinding it, of course, I gotta deburr the edges here. I think that second time when I said a little bit more was probably a little bit too much, but that's okay. So the key here is when this goes on, I had it this way last time. Not that it matters yet, as long as it fits. All right, so now I am, instead of being at the edge or a little bit past the edge, I am now inside the metal edge here. So I can feel the metal. That's okay as long as, right, the key here, what we're looking for, is can you still use all the holes? As long as you have enough meat around the holes, you're going to be fine. The other thing that you can run into is on the front. It gets really close to the swerve modules. So if it's hitting the swerve modules on the front, then you might have to just take a whole extra cut on the back so you can back off a little bit more from there. But mine is in. It looks like it's going to line up and be good. So now our problem is, which we talked about, there are bolts here, 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 and we did the whole L bracket on this side with bolts. All of those things are in the way. We have to be able to sit this flat and clamp it in to be able to attach it. That's one of the reasons why I like at least the L brackets to be riveted on, because that helps kind of hold everything in place. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to undo those bolts to be able to put this down and get it nice and flat. So I guess we'll slide this off to the side and we'll just get to it. So we need to take all of this side off. And one of the things we have to watch out for is, of course, that like we don't want this corner to shift too much on us when we're going to put this together. So if this joint here moves on us, that'll change the shape of the robot, and it might get stuff to start binding up later. I think as long as we're careful and we don't move the robot around much, once we take these bolts out, we should be able to just clamp our polycarbonate belly pan on and then re-drill it without having any issues. All right, almost there. Okay, got that one. We'll save the bracket as well. This is the easy part of our C-channel bracket there. And again, as long as I don't bump the C-channel bracket, if you accidentally bump this bracket and get it to rotate or something like that, or if you feel it move a lot when you're doing this, you might want to drop a bolt back in just to make sure that it's still lined up to be able to go from there. Now, if you didn't rivet any of the angle brackets on the top, which I strongly suggest you rivet both of those angle brackets. So we had this bracket on this side, and we had another one on the other side, right? So we have this on the back side here, and we have one more on the other side as well. But we had to take this one off because it was bolted on. You can see now this piece is able to move kind of more than I would like, right? So we know this kind of has to be in and flat to hold everything together there. So if you have to use bolts, what you need to do is when we go to put the floor on, when we go to put the belly pan on, you're going to need to make sure this is lined up in those positions to kind of hold everything together for where it was. I think the smartest thing to do is if you have rivets, and I'm going to go ahead and do this on mine. If I flip this back over for a second, again, trying to be careful not to move things since these C-channels are a little bit loose right now. I think I'm going to go ahead and add the rivets onto this to hold that beam in place across. This way we'll know that beam is going to stay more located in the right position without me having to do a lot of extra work on it. And one more. All right, now we'll flip back over. Again, if you don't have that ability, what I would do is I would line that bracket up as you're putting the floor on, and I would use that bracket to make sure I would even maybe drop shorter bolts in. but then clamp with that bracket there to make sure that it stays lined up. You're just going to have to spend more time being careful with getting your stuff clamped together and aligned correctly. In our case now, it's pretty well held in place, so I think we're going to be in good shape here. We can put our belly pan on. It will sit flat. We can line it up on the back and the sides, and now we're going to need a bunch of clamps. Okay, those are 1.5. Those aren't going to work for us. You need at least 2 inches on your clamps. All right, and this is another situation where if you have a couple people, one person can be kind of holding the sides to make sure they don't feel it sticking out on the sides, and then one person can kind of be holding the back as well, or checking on the back to make sure the back isn't sticking out. And then you can have somebody come in and do the clamps. So for me, I'm just going to try to get it lined up on all the sides. That seems pretty good. And now, hopefully, I can get this attached without it moving on me. So let's see. I'll go. We're going to have to move the clamps around a lot anyway, so that's fine. All right, there's one. And depending on what hole we're drilling, you might want these clamps facing the other direction. Because with the screw part of the clamp facing up on the direction that I'm going to have to drill from, it's going to make it a little harder for me to get to it to drill it. But that's okay. Let's go here for now. All right. Cool. So this is held on. Next step, we're going to need a drill. And these holes, I think for my box, right, when we were doing that hole, let's measure and cut these boxes. My holes in this box was 0.196 inches. Some of the box might have holes that are 0.201 or whatever. So we're basically looking for a drill bit that kind of fits in the holes. That's the size hole we want to drill. Usually that's going to be like a number 7, but you might have a slightly different size. And if you don't have the sizes, that's fine too. So let's see, like a number 7 is 201, but that's a little bit bigger than the size that I have. Let's try a number 8. So number 8 is working for me. So you can do that. Again, if you only have a few different drill sizes, like if you just bought number 7s, because that's the most common size that we use for this, just use it. If you don't have any of the number drill bits, then you can use a 3/16 drill bit, and that will work as well. All right, I like the idea of mostly riveting this on, our belly pan on, but we know in the front area, we need to attach not just to the box that's directly here, but we have to attach to the C channel that's underneath it. So we're going to do at least 1, 2, maybe 3 bolts here that we need to go through everything. So I'm going to do a set of bolts on this section, and then I'll probably come back and add rivets everywhere else. All right, so actually what I'm going to do is, if I'm going to work on this corner, I'm going to move one of my clamps over to this corner here, if I can get to it. No, that clamp's too small. So if you can get a clamp that fits there, I think it helps a little bit to keep the plastic from spreading out. So I definitely have these big clamps that I know will fit in that area. If you don't, the other clamps will mostly hold it in place. When you drill, though, it may spread out. You may get some like shavings in between the hole where you're drilling, and in between the metal and the plastic. In which case, it won't be sitting flat. So you got to kind of like scrape that out before you move on. All right, but because I have this kind of like tightened down here, I can get to this hole. And since I can see through the plastic to the hole, I'm going to just do my best to line this up on the hole. Now, if you're off by a little bit, it's still going to work. It'll sort of like adjust itself when it goes in. But just do your best to be centered on the hole and then you can just drill until it pops in. And what you're looking for is, like, if this shaving piece ended up underneath the plastic, like if that got shoved under the plastic and you can see it in between the metal and the plastic, you should clean that out before attaching this. But mine went through fine, so I'm going to go ahead and drop the bolt through here. And we always, with this, want to kind of do one hole at a time and check things as we go. Actually, before I drilled that hole, I did do this, but I forgot to tell you to do it. But you want to check, now that everything's clamped up, check your sides, make sure it's not sticking out, and check your back, make sure it's not sticking out. Then you'll know, right, everything is in a good spot. All right, now we've got that one started. Let's see if I can get a nut started on the bottom here. Not too bad. All right, and then with the wrench, we can tighten that one in. All right, and on mine, again, I had the slightly too thin wall material, and we strongly encourage you to get a thicker wall on the box. So if you have the thick wall box, it's going to be hard for you to crush it, so you can tighten it down pretty tight. All right, let's see. If we move this now, if I can, there we go. Let me see if we can get, if I'm right on the edge here, I can drill kind of the last hole that's here. Now, if you cut your plastic and it's a little short and that last hole isn't working for you, it looks like it's on the edge or it's going to not quite reach, that's fine. Just do the two that you can reach. But we want to get 2 bolts, ideally, through the plastic on this box, on our inner box here. So we'll kind of do our best to line up and drill through. That time, I hit the metal, so I wasn't perfectly centered. That's OK. No big deal. All right, and then we're going to do another bolt because we want to also attach the channel above with it. There we go. And we'll tighten it the same way. This one is still really accessible. I think the only one that's hard to get to right was that one front bolt that we had to do a little bit of tricks to. All right, this one, I think that's started. All right, that looks good. I think now I don't even need the clamp. So the clamp, again, is not stopping it from moving. It's just stopping it from spreading apart when you drill, right? Because when you drill, if there's no clamp nearby, it can pull up, and that material can get stuck in between. The clamp kind of helps stop that. But now we got the 2 bolts in between here, so it should be hard for it to move. I'm going to do the closest hole now. So we sort of have 3 holes available here. I'm going to do the farthest and the closest. But again, as long as you get 2 bolts in, it's probably OK. And one more bolt on this side. Looks good. Sometimes even when I can reach the nut and hold on to it, I like to hold it in place and spin the bolt anyway. I feel like that's easier to get it to start. All right. That's good. Where do we want to go next? I mean, we can kind of go wherever we want now. Let's get the corner here going so that kind of this side of it is attached and in a good spot. So I'm going to go right into, well, hold on. If I'm going to rivet, can I get that very first hole or not? I think I can. If it looks like your tools aren't going to let you get to the closest hole, you can always just do the second hole. It's not a big deal. It's not going to make much of a difference. But I'll go all the way to the end hole here. And add a rivet. Now that we're doing more rivets, I regret not bringing my pneumatic riveter. That's maybe a little too far away. I'm going to just shift it a little bit. The next place I'm going for is right at the crossing point. We definitely need something here. And again, if you're doing bolts, if you're sticking to bolts on this one, after you drill this hole, right, it should line up with the hole above because we're lined up with the box. So you should be able to just drop a bolt all the way through. And as you're doing this too, if you feel like this one feels like there's a big raised burr edge there, so you can always hit that with a deburring tool to knock that off. It always helps if things sit flat. So if you've got these burrs that are making the bolt not sit flat or the rivet not sit flat, sometimes it helps to clean it off. But since this is plastic, usually it will kind of crush and not make too big of a difference either way. All right, now, next up, I'm going to go to the first hole on the other side. Right, so we basically want to make, I guess we'll do that on this one too. We basically want to make a little T-shape here and a T-shape here to get the most strength we can out of this. So I'm going to hit the first hole on this side. And at some point, you might be able to start drilling more than one hole at a time. But things can always shift on you. So I like to get a bunch of things started before I start drilling a few holes. But it will speed it up to drill a couple holes at a time and then do the fasteners. All right, so I feel like this section definitely isn't going to move on me. So I'm going to do one more hole here. And I just kind of did the hole that mirrors the bracket above it. But, you know, any of these holes is probably going to do the same job. And then I'm going to do the same thing kind of here. Yeah, I'll skip 2 holes and do one. And then on the other side, I'll skip 2 holes and then do one. Did that go? Yeah, it went. All right. Now, it's like, again, doesn't really matter which holes you're choosing here. This one's nice and clean. All right. If I did this hole instead, would have been fine. We just want to make sure, again, because this is sort of acting as a structural piece in this area, helping to hold that front beam that we have, our front inner frame rail, and this cross rail that we have here. So I'm probably overdoing it a little bit. Okay. Then let's see. We want kind of one more on this edge to continue the trend of what we're doing. So maybe we'll work to finish this whole side off, and then we'll mirror that over to the other side. So here we have 3 holes to this one that's attached. If I do 3 holes here and 1 more on this end, that feels pretty good. I can get with that. All right. Move that a little bit. This one is off the edge more than I remembered, but just feeling all the sides, it still feels good. All right, we'll go all the way to the end hole on this side that is completely covered by the plastic. That's clean too. All right. This clamp isn't really doing anything anymore. If you really want to overkill it, you could maybe drop 1 more rivet in between these 2. I think I won't do that right now. Keep in mind there is a chance you might at some point need to take the belly pan off, though probably not. All right, so that is sort of our setup here. Let's do the same setup now on the other side, on the front. So I think we had one of these just to help us get that first couple screws going. All right, so we've got the 3 bolt holes in a row. Let's do those again. So first one is, let me flip this over here. There you go. First one at the crossing point back here. where it's lined up. And you can actually see if you look through, there is a mark on the aluminum probably from where you tighten the initial bolt in. All right, then we'll drop a bolt through there. All right, and I can get the next hole, the first hole on this one, so I'll do that one, which is a slightly different order than the other side, but that's okay. That one left some burrs. That one started. And add the wrench. All right, probably release this one now. And we got one more on the top here. That fell, yeah, that, that one left a huge burr. All right. Wish I had a trick to tell you to get the bolt to drop through the second hole in the box better, but I don't know, I struggle with that every time. The only thing is if you are somewhere where you can actually see the bolt, you can obviously line it up better. All right. Putting that in. I guess this time we're here. Let's just go ahead and get our skip 2 holes. And we'll get our rivet in there. Skip 2 holes the other way. So in the third hole, I'll drill. All right, next up, see if we get the top hole here. Okay, that one lifted up on me, and there is now some shavings and stuff in between the plastic and the aluminum that's there. So because that corner is a little bit separate, I can actually just kind of bend that up. Try to blow it out of the way so it's sitting flat. And if it's like way pushed out, like if you feel a huge burr down there, again, if you can bend it out a little bit, you can actually use this to deburr the bottom hole. That's usually not a problem, and for me, that's not a problem here. So we'll go ahead and rivet that. Again, you can avoid that just by being able to get a clamp closer to the end or to where you're drilling. And my problem was, that rivet head broke off a little bit, but I think it's still good. I think what I was going to say is, my problem is I think this clamp, oh, it does fit. So if I had flipped this clamp over, I could have been right next to the hole. I just kind of was, I guess, too lazy to try, or I was afraid to try. All right, so we know our next hole is going to be right at the T, so we can, with the clamp flipped upside down, we can clamp closer. Although, with the clamp upside down, it's getting stuck on the wires. There we go. So now we'll go down to right aligned with the cross beam. Yep, and that did a good job of holding it in place. The last one's shank was still in there. All right, here we go. adjust this. Actually, this is fine. It's just on the other side. So we're doing, we're skipping 1, 2, 3, and putting this in the 4th hole here. And I feel like now we're at a good spot where we can go ahead and also do one here. And this one feels probably not necessary, but we're going to do the same thing we did on the other side. I think in hindsight, this rivet, one more hole over, probably works to connect both ways, but it's fine. It's not going to hurt anything. In fact, you know, whatever. I mean, more rivets, more stronger. Get that one, get this one. All right, then we can try to finish out this side. Oh, wait. I already drilled this hole. I didn't rivet it. Oh, that one's got a big burr. Much better. All right, and then I think we just have one more. On the other side, we just did one more on the end here. So let's get the upside down clamp. Well, now it doesn't reach because it's 2. Okay, now it doesn't reach because the fronts are taller than the backs. So we'll get as close kind of as we can here. And then hit the last hole that you have completely covered with plastic. All right, this middle on the front, that's a lot kind of unsupported area. Kind of get a clamp on here as best I can. I think I want to do, I mean, you can do as many rivets here as you want, but if I did like sort of 1 and 2, that feels reasonable. But now I feel like I need to try my best to make them the same distance. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3, 6, 9. And in between my 2 fingers is 3, 6, 9, 10, 11. So we can go here. And it would be 10 on each side and 9 in the middle. That seems reasonable. So I think this one and this one. Now we can double check. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, that looks lined up. Now, it doesn't have to be even. You could literally just eyeball it and drill wherever you want, and that's going to be just fine. But I am going to try to make it symmetrical. All right, that one was also a little far away. Maybe I can reach in there with a, yeah, okay. There's like one little piece of something in there. I think it's plastic and it probably doesn't matter, but all right, we push it out of the way. Oh, that is also a very burr-filled hole. And yep, we'll try to clamp again because yeah, that was better. All right, now front of the robot is attached. Sides of the robot are attached. We've got to work on the back of the robot here. I guess let's just start out right off the bat by getting our end holes going. Get another one of these maybe. So I'll try to get as close as I can. I'm going to just do the farthest outside hole that is completely covered by plastic, basically. So this one is only half covered, so I'm not going to bother with that. If you got to move in a little bit, that's okay. It's a little bit crooked there. Still going to work. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side next. I think I have to shift this a little bit, otherwise I don't have room for the drill. Unfortunately, that puts it on the plate on this side, so we'll have to move over to here. All right, and let's get that last outside hole. That one was pretty clean. Probably didn't need to deburr that one. Okay, then sort of the next spot we're looking at is going to be, we know we want our battery mounts. We're going to have to tee up off of our battery mounts. So I'm going to take the hole that's directly centered below each of those battery mount posts that we did, and we'll drill that out. I feel like we can get away with 2 holes this time, maybe. All right. One and two. All right, now what? Here is the little bit of an issue. I don't know if this will show up on the camera, but the battery mount itself, I can still make wiggle a decent amount, which means if it's bent out like this, there's a small crack here. If I drill the hole now, that crack is going to live there forever. So I really want to have these pushed together. Unfortunately, where this piece is very hard to clamp. There's no real way to clamp that. So what I'm going to want to do here is I'm going to push up on that battery mount to make sure it stays flush with the plastic when we go to attach stuff here. Be a little bit careful, right, because somebody's going to be drilling. So I don't really want my hand next to the hole that I'm drilling into. That said, we're only drilling through the top surface of the metal too, so that's going to give us some extra protection. Yeah, I don't see a good way to really clamp this. So yeah, we'll do our best to hold it up to line the hole up. And I guess we'll go to this very first hole right here and drill through. And then I think it also still helps to make sure it's up to get the rivet started. We don't want it to bend back down on us here. Usually once the rivet starts going, it's going to pull it into place. And it did there. Okay. So there's one. It's a lot sturdier now, but I'm going to go and jump all the way to the end of this bracket and try to get one more hole. And I'm going to try to hold it. In this case, I'm holding it not to stop the box from moving, but to try to keep the plastic from being able to spread and getting stuff caught in between. Since I can't do a clamp, I'm just doing my best to help out with my second hand. The drill is not the correct tool to add the rivet. All right. Feels like I want to do one kind of in the middle here. Is that? Oh, there is no middle. So, all right. One side will have 4 holes, and one side will have 5 holes. And it doesn't really matter which one you choose. And we're going to repeat the same thing on this one here. And while we're doing that, I'll also mention, if you are using a 3/16 drill bit instead of the number 7 or number 8 or whatever we have, you might have to, if you can't get the rivet to go in easily, I usually try to force it with the riveter. If you put the rivet in the riveter first, you can use the riveter to kind of like wiggle and force it in. But if that doesn't go, it's okay to just drill the hole again. Run the drill bit back through the hole a second time. Let's make sure this is up as much as possible when we attach this one. Looks good. All right, and then go to the end here. And one more in the middle. So I skipped 4, so I'm going to drill in the 5th hole up from the bottom. That hole is a little nasty. There we go. Okay, what am I thinking? I'm thinking we want at least one more here. The question is, do we want 1 or 2? I think I'm going to do 2. It's probably overkill, but it makes me feel more like I have a good L or T-shaped bracket on each side. So again, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the middle will have 6. That seems reasonable. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh no, the 5th hole. 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th hole. 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th hole. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the middle. Yeah, that seems balanced enough. Let me still add a clamp nearby just to try to keep it from spreading. Let me move the clamp over just enough so the drill can reach. Now there is a chance that we will have to remove some of these rivets when we go to put the bumper mount on. If that happens to you, it's really easy to remove a rivet. We can do an example of one. Let me set this rivet and then we'll take one out. So this is also, if you are adding on to this robot, you're finding other things that you want to build on here, and you're like, oh man, that one hole doesn't work for me. I need to be able to attach something else to that one hole. And let's say it's the hole I just did. Say this hole, can't have a rivet there, got to move it somewhere else. You remove a rivet just by taking basically the same drill bit you used to open the plastic up, and you just drill right into the center of the rivet, and it will pop out like that. And now we're back down to the hole. The one thing I will mention is that you'll get this little ring on the drill bit. You don't really want to grab that and try to turn it by hand. Sometimes it's fine, but a lot of times little aluminum shavings can get stuck there with it, and it's really easy to accidentally cut yourself. So that is a situation where you're going to want to grab some kind of pair of pliers. And this is actually really fun. If you get a bunch of them on there, you can put them in a vise or grab a bunch with a pair of pliers. And if you put the drill in reverse, it'll just like drive itself off. And you can do, if you're drilling out a bunch of rivets, you can get like, I don't know, 10 of them on there and then grab them all at once and have them all come out that way. All right, but now that we've removed that rivet, I actually do want it there, so I'm just going to put another rivet in. The only thing you have to watch out for when you're removing rivets like this is every time you drill it out, you do have the possibility of basically increasing the hole size, expanding the hole a little bit if you're drilling not perfectly in the center. So eventually the hole might get loose. And at some point, if that happens, well, for us it's not a big deal. We'll just like say, hey, let's move the rivet over one hole because it doesn't really matter. If you have to use that one specific hole and you have to use a rivet, then you might have to go up to the next size up rivets. Sometimes you can just swap to a bolt and a washer and that works as well. All right, I think that's pretty good. I mean, this feels like it is not going anywhere. And the front of our robot now feels very sturdy, like it is not going to move. So that is the belly pan attached. Let me clean this table up a little bit, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up the battery mount. All right, so our last piece, I think called SKB26110, is the last side of our battery box, or battery mount area. Now the problem with this is that where we need to put this is in the middle of that whole plastic belly pan, and there is no easy way to clamp it in place. Now I think you saw when we did some of the box before, it's okay for us to kind of try to hold the box in place and drill just through the plastic, because the plastic's soft. It's going to drill really easily and things aren't going to move. But you don't really want to drill through a piece of metal like this. It's not going to stay where you held it. And sometimes the metal, especially when it's small like this, can get stuck on the drill and start spinning around, which could be a safety hazard. So what I think we can get away with, though, is if we pre-drill maybe 3 holes on here ahead of time, then when we go to put it in the box, we can sort of line it up, use the battery to make sure it's in a good spot, and then mark through one of the holes and drill. Then we can attach that hole, line up the next hole, drill, and then the last one should be free once it's attached that way. So I think as long as we pre-drill this, we'll be in good shape. Now, the secret is, or the trick is on this, you can just drill 3 holes anywhere you want. I'll go ahead and measure it out and put them in like accurate spots, but it doesn't matter. As long as you have, I think, 3 holes along one of the walls of this, it's going to work out well. But I am going to, for drilling into aluminum, we're going to need a snap punch in order to get ourselves a little starting divot. And I guess if I measure this, right, we know the outside width of this is like 1 inch. It's a little under 1 inch, 0.9975, whatever. If we go ½ an inch in, we could scribe a ½ inch line along here. And that would be a good like starting point for where we want to probably drill. So I'll go ahead and do that. We'll do ½ inch. And let me see here. I feel like I'm going to end up coloring this whole thing in. So we're going to have 1 hole kind of on that end, 1 hole here in the middle, and then 1 hole somewhere on this end. So if we take our calipers at ½ an inch, we can, I guess I have to tip it up just a little bit, but we can go ahead and scribe a line at ½ an inch through each of my little Sharpie sections here. You could scribe all the way along if you can just see it. So that's like one direction where we want to drill. Now I do want to check if I'm going to be riveting this. Actually, it doesn't matter because I'm going to rivet up from the bottom, so the riveter doesn't have to fit. Okay, and then this piece is presumably 6 inches long. Yeah, pretty close. So I want to put one about halfway. So I'll go to around 3 inches. Again, you could actually measure your piece and get exactly the middle. Doesn't matter. But I'm going to go to 3 inches here and scribe. So we have one cross there. I know it got a little crooked at the end, but it was straight through the part it needed to be straight through. And then on the ends, we can kind of choose whatever we want, whatever feels good. I usually do 3/8 of an inch. 3/8 of an inch feels like there's a lot of safety margin. You could probably do as small as a 1/4 inch to the edge, but I'm going to do 0.375. So I'll set my calipers to 375 and scribe here and scribe here. So now what we're going to do is every spot where we have crosses, I'm going to try to get my snap punch right in the middle of the cross section and snap it down a couple times. And remember, the accuracy needed here is so far away from using a caliper and trying to get it set up. So if you are off of your cross, it's fine. As long as you're in the ballpark, it's going to be okay. You can, if you want to be super accurate, you can. If the first punch misses, you can kind of go on an angle and snap on that angle, and you can kind of move the point over a little bit. But again, I mean, like it doesn't matter where it ends up. It's going to be just fine. We have the same problem now as I bring the drill back over here, and that is I can't just like hold this in the air and drill through that. That would not be safe. If you have a vise, which I guess I do have here and could use, you can clamp this in the vise and then use that to drill. In fact, if you were doing it in the vise, you might have wanted to mark on this side because that this leg, you could sit down in the vise and then be able to drill really easily on this edge. Of course, I marked this side. That's a little harder to grab in the vise. You can grab this way, though, in the vise as well and just drill on the inside there. If you don't, though, and what we'll do here is we can just clamp it to the table, and that will help hold it in place for us. So let's see. I think if I get this one clamp tight, and I'm using the C clamp instead of the quick clamp just because I can make it a little tighter, and I don't have a lot to grab onto. So this just feels like a little more secure for me, but the other way would probably work as well. And then just try to get your drill into that divot that we made, and then you can just drill through. Drilling through aluminum, I think this is the first aluminum we've drilled for this entire robot. You want to drill in high speed, so make sure your drill's set on the highest number, 2 usually, maybe 3, and then just pull the trigger all the way. Let it spin fast. All right, that one's done. We'll pop that off. Actually, before we unclamp it, I don't know if this is easier before or after. I think the other side is going to be easier after. So there's always going to be kind of this burr that shows up there. And with aluminum, it's more important to get in there and deburr it than with the plastic, which is really soft and usually moves out of the way. And you can do all of the deburring at the end, but I'm just thinking because I'm going to put this back on the table and clamp again, I don't want that burr kind of digging down into the table. So I thought I would deburr it first. And now we'll go ahead and clamp it up again. And we can do this side hole. So just get it into that divot and go. All right, and this time, I think what I need to do is just slide it so that the next hole is off the edge. So this hole I can deburr after. That is off the edge of the table. So find the divot and drill. Okay, let's undo this. And then hit that with the deburrer. And again, if you don't have, I guess I haven't mentioned that, if you don't have one of these deburring tools, there is another method you can use. You just got to be a little careful. And that is if you get kind of a really big drill bit, more or less you get the biggest size drill bit you have. What you don't want to do is when you do this, don't just grab the drill bit like this, because all of these edges where the spirals are, those are cutting edges, they're sharp. You won't necessarily feel it when you grab like this, but when you start turning, that force is going to twist it a little bit in your hands, and you might end up with some small cuts. But if you hold it on the back, where it's round, or on the shank back here, where the flutes aren't, you can take this and you can gently spin it in the hole. And you're not going to push down a lot. You're just going to mostly spin. And that is going to knock the burrs off and give you a relatively clean hole. There's also another deburring tool that is like a cone shape that is meant to be put in a drill. That's going to work fine as also. Just make sure you don't kind of go too far with that one. All right, so this side all feels good. I think I didn't do the middle one on the inside. And there is one more thing. With the inside ones, sometimes you can reach up from the outside and still do it. Sometimes that works better. Sometimes that's your only option, but here I guess we can kind of do it either way. All right, those all feel pretty good. Just kidding, this one still has a little bit. Now they're good. All right, that piece is ready. Now we're going to need to bring the robot and a battery so we can get it aligned to be able to attach this to the frame. All right, so if we put the battery in the robot, now it remains to be seen. I think probably this way is going to be the way that works better to plug it in and stuff. But it doesn't really matter whether we end up going that direction or this direction. I think this direction, this gets really close to the ramp and stuff. So I think it's probably going to be better to have it on the outside. And it's still, if we do the connectors in this orientation, it'll be inside the frame and there's a bumper past it. All right, but what we want to do is take this piece, and this piece is going to basically be on the bottom here to hold the battery in. And you can just kind of, again, it doesn't really matter. If it's way off like this, it's still pretty much going to do its job. But I'm going to do my best to kind of center it between the two boxes that are there. But here's the thing. If I put it right against the battery, you might have some batteries that are a little bit different in size, and it might get stuck. It might have a hard time going in and coming out. So I usually find it helps to do like a little bit of some kind of buffer there. So it's not right against it. And if you have like some skinny, maybe a 16th inch piece of aluminum of some kind or of plastic, you could put that little shim in and have just that smallest gap in between. Another thing that I think works is if I do a couple layers of tape on the battery, that's going to give me that extra, just a little bit of spacing there to help out. Let's see. I think I want to go at least 3, and then we'll see how that feels. Okay, the last one, there we go. I put, 3 is probably good. I'm going to do 4, though. I'm going to do one more layer. Oh, that went under. Okay, that's fine. All right, so I think like now, if we're against it, and I'm not going to like squeeze it in or anything, but if it's just sitting there against it, that's pretty good. That's what we're looking for. And really, all we have to do at this point, because we've already drilled these holes, right? Like if I just start drilling, I can mark that hole. I can actually drill all the way through this hole, probably even with the battery still sitting there. And that's how I want to do it, but I have a problem, which is I can't arrange it so that that hole will be off the table. So if I drill through too far, I don't want to hit the table. So what I'm going to do is grab anything that I've got that is scrap. And I've got just a random piece of wood. This is left over from Kitbot bumpers, I think, the non-swerve Kitbot bumpers. But if you have a little piece of wood or a little piece of metal, anything you can slide under here, if I put this underneath where I'm going to drill my hole, now if I, drill too far, I'm going to drill into the wood that's down there and not the table. All right, so we'll just make sure this is flat against it. Get it lined up. See if I lined up left to right. I guess that's pretty close, all right? And I'm going to go nice and easy and slow, because what I don't want is I don't want to catch this piece of metal and send it flinging around. So going nice and slow like that is going to work. We've got our first hole. I will deburr it a little bit. And now I don't want to take the rivet and go this direction, because then that extra ball and extra whatever parts of the rivet will be sticking down, right? If I go this way, it's going to be nice and flat. Same thing, if you have to use bolts, we do have some from the Kitbot stuff, right? There are some of these 1/2-inch bolts. These will work great for this, but again, you're going to need to come up from the bottom so that you have the smooth button head part underneath the robot. So I guess we take the battery out. I'm gonna need to, maybe this piece of wood will work for me. Gonna need to tip this up. Will that stay? No. What if I jam it into here? That seems stable enough. All right, and then we'll take our rivet up, line up that one hole, or bolt if you're using those short bolts. And then we'll go ahead and rivet this one down all the way. All right, and then we go back to the down position. Battery goes back in the robot. All All right, and it should go in, like, it should be not easy to go in, but it should go in, right? So you can see for me, like, it slides, but I feel it rubbing just a little bit as we drop in there. And that's kind of what you want, right? It should be rubbing against the tape, but we shouldn't have had this pushed in so hard that it doesn't even drop in, because that would kind of defeat the purpose of us doing our extra tape stuff there. Now, if you get to this point and oops, it didn't work, it's already too tight, and you missed that location, you can just take that bolt or drill that rivet out. And we talked about it doesn't matter where this angle is as long as it's blocking most of the back of the battery. So just shift it over a little bit and try again, right? So do the hole here on the plastic. Just shift the whole angle over. All right, let's try to get our other side going. So again, this can rotate, right? So I'm going to bring it in so it's just touching the battery. And then go ahead and get it started, get it drilling. And we're drilling slowly just because everything's in the way. Take the battery out. Tip it up so we can get access with the riveter. Things like that, right? Yeah, that seems good. Feels good. All right, and down. This time we do not need to put the battery back in because this can't move. It's already basically set. This third hole we're doing, this is our safety hole. This is the extra one just in case something happens to either of the other two. All right, and since that was now attached and the battery's not right next to where I'm drilling, I could drill faster. It's not, there's no reason to be careful. I had the wood underneath if I drilled too far. I don't know if I did ding the wood on that last hole. So good thing it was there. Get that propped up. Let's get our last rivet in. All right, lowering it down. And so that's perfect. It's a little snug with the tape on for this battery, which is, I think, what we were going for. Now, if we peel that tape off, and slide it in, that's perfect. There's just a little bit of play in the battery. So if I have a battery that's a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, it's going to work out great. Then our last problem here is this side to side is a little bit more than we want to see. And we do need some way to hold the battery down. Like if we're driving around and this is bumping or whatever and it's falling out, that could be a problem. And the last thing that we're going to look at here is if you can get your battery, that's one of the reasons why I like this 1-inch angle instead of using another piece of 1x2 box. It gives me more room to reach down here to grab it. But it's still not the easiest to take this battery out. I think I can do it by pushing in with one hand here and pulling on that one. But the battery is heavy. So if your team is having trouble putting the battery in and taking it out just by being able to grab the little bits that we have available to us, one option that you could do is on the bottom here in the plastic. This middle of this plastic isn't really doing much. So if you're having that problem, you could do something like you could get a hole saw, which is like a drill bit that's a big circle. You could drill like, let's say like a 2.5, maybe even bigger hole there. And that would let you push up from the bottom with your fingers to maybe get a better grab on it. If you don't have hole saws, you might be able to drill a few small holes like this, 4 small holes maybe. And then you can put a saw in there, a hand saw. It could be just a hacksaw blade. And you could cut around, or it could be a powered saw, and you could have that opening as well. Or if you have like one of those oscillating multi-tools, you could probably just cut something out. So that is an option if you find you're struggling with the battery, because the battery changing is something you do every match and every time you practice. And if you're really struggling with it, you do not want that to be the thing that makes it so, you know what I mean, like you can't, you're running out of time going to matches. That's not a thing that should be stressing you. But for me, just because I'm working on this robot, and I'm used to taking batteries out of really bad spots because that's what my team used to do. I'm not really having a problem taking this in and out. So I'm going to go ahead and skip cutting the plastic there, but that is a solution if you're running into that problem. But we do have to figure out the stop the battery from bouncing out during a match, and we have to do the stop the battery from sliding from side to side. So let me get rid of some of these tools, and we'll bring back a couple of options for solutions. All right, so I have a few different options for the side-to-sideness that's happening here. One of our issues is we can't just get another piece of material here and then rivet or bolt it in place, because what I don't want is the ends of the rivets or the bolts, that metal, to be scraping on the side of the battery. You might be able to get away with it, but I think it's better if we can do something that's a little softer to help kind of hold it in place and cushion it. So we basically need something that's going to take up, kind of, if we shift this all the way over one way, we need to take up this much space, which looks like, about ½ an inch or so. So one option is this. We're going to use a lot of this, though, to mount our electronics, so we got to be careful not to use too much. But I think we'll have maybe some left over. Of course, you can buy more of this at the any hardware store for the most part. But this is like hook and loop, but it's like this dual lock stuff. It's a little thicker than regular what you would think of as Velcro. And I think this, like if I were to put it on both sides, that fits on both sides, and the battery has just a little bit of play left. So something like that, running. If I were doing that, I would run maybe 2 strips on each side of it, and that would give us some connections. Now, the downside of this is it is adhesive on both sides, and so the cover, if this plastic or the paper gets peeled back, there's going to be sticky stuff on the inside, which could be a problem. You could maybe peel it back and put tape or put something on top of it to cover that up, which could work as well. But another thing you could do is, I found these like furniture, like felt pieces that are pretty thick. And I think like combined, they end up being pretty close to the right width as well. So if we have a couple of those on one side and a couple of those on the other side, of course they won't stay until I actually stick them in. But if they're in there, this battery has just a little bit of play side to side, which I think is okay. And also, like if it's moving side to side, it's bumping into those soft felt pieces. So that could be pretty effective. If you can't find anything like that to put in there, I think I'm going to go ahead and use these. But if you can't find anything like that, you do have the option kind of just finding something and taping it there. So if you found like a piece of plastic that was the nice thickness, and instead of bolting it in place, you could kind of just do your best to tape it in place. And that would work as well. You could get also, there's like just the regular adhesive Velcro, and you could do a couple of stacks of that. I like that because the adhesive is really strong and the Velcro is kind of durable. But I'm going to go ahead and use these little circles that I got here, and I'll just kind of, doesn't really matter where they go. I'll kind of eyeball a couple of them on one side, and then same thing on the other side here. Right, so now when we go to drop our battery in, we've got like that little bit of play forward and backwards, a little bit of play side to side, but not much. And I think that's pretty good. I think that's what we're looking for here. So that battery, I think, is secure, except it can pop out. So ideally what we want now is to have, this is one wrap. So it's like it's fuzzy on one side and the hook on the other side. And if this can go around the battery, like if we can go all the way around the battery and Velcro it together, or seal it together, that's going to stop the battery from being able to lift up. But we have a problem, which is like, where do we put this in order to make that happen? You have a few options again, always got options. It is possible if you go back and remove some of the rivets that you can get this to pass underneath these boxes. And that might be actually an easy-ish way to do it. So if this is running under the boxes when you fasten them down, then you can just wrap it back over the top to hold the battery in place. The other thing is, if we, on the outside of the metal here, if we cut a little bit of a hole, we can pass this down through and it can run underneath the bottom of the robot. And I think I like that way slightly more because I kind of like the idea of the metal pieces sitting flat where we want them to sit and not being pushed up by the thickness of the Velcro. But I think it's going to work either way. So the question is, how do we make a big enough slot on the side here to be able to pass this through? Unfortunately, there's no easy way, but I'm going to go ahead and get a 1/4 inch drill bit. And one of the things you can do is try to just drill a few holes as close together as possible. And then we can take a file and try to clean that hole up. That's one option. Another option is if I drill 2 holes, I think I can connect them together if I use, I've got this like oscillating multi-tool, which you turn on, this thing vibrates, and it cuts you can cut pretty much straight down and in. And this is good for some of that detail work, like we're going to be trying to do here. So I'll try to do one side with just the drill bit. I'll do one side with the multi-tool. You might have other saws and stuff that can work. I think if you flip this over and you work on the back side, a jigsaw would be able to make those cuts as well. So you could drill 2 holes and use a jigsaw to connect it together. So let's get some markings, though. We want this to kind of be in the middle of the battery, but it doesn't really matter. But we might as well, get a tape measure on here and try to do our best. So this piece is 6.5. So the battery is about 6.5. So if we put the center of our thing at about 3.25, and I'm not going to worry about being super precise, but 3.25 is about right there. Then you can measure the Velcro stuff you have. There are thinner straps of Velcro as well, so you could use that as well. This is 1.5 inches. So basically, I'm looking at trying to go. So in theory, 3/4 of an inch in either direction, but I think we're going to be better served by doing like 1 inch in either direction. So it's a nice. We got an extra at least 1/2 inch or so of clearance. So that, and then that. Something like that seems to be about the size of the hole that we want. We can look at that. Yeah, that looks about right. Gives us a little bit on either side. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I have this line that is basically in the center and the width of the Velcro plus a little bit on each side. I'm going to just drill on either side of that line, on either end of that line. And again, if I go a little bit too far or a little bit too short, it's not the end of the world. We can always, file it open more if we need to. But let's see if we can get some extra wires out of the way. So I'll go to one end of the line, and I'm just going to be basically right as close as I can to the aluminum without really rubbing on it. And we'll just drill. Wait, I'm going to drill into the table if I don't get my piece of wood back. All right, get that piece of wood back under there. All right, now I'm going to drill through. Well, I stopped in time. I didn't hit the wood this time. So I would have been fine, but, All right, and then I'll drill a hole on the other end of that as well. All right. Now our goal is to connect these two together. And we can check, again, with the strap. It's going to easily fit. I made it a little bit too wide. I think this hole was out a little bit. That's fine. Now, basically, I'm just going to get as close as I can to the previous hole and drill again. And again. And if it slips in, that means you tried to probably get a little too close. You can drill on a little bit of an angle away from the other hole. And that helps out a little bit. And we just keep going. Okay, that time I definitely hit the wood. All right, and when you have just a last little bridge here, it's going to be really hard to drill into that. You could maybe do your drill bit on an angle and rotate it to try to eat into it a little bit. But I think at this point, let's see if we can get a file or anything started in there. Kind of want to break. I got one little bridge in the middle, and you can kind of lean the drill against the side and rotate it back and forth, lift it up and down. But I was able to break through the one hole there. This is not really the way drill bits were meant to be used, but because this is plastic and it's relatively soft, you can sometimes get away with it. All right, now we're going to grab a file. If you have a coarse file, that is the best choice. You want something that's as rough as it can be. And we're just going to basically get in there and try to connect our holes together. I think probably if you have another person to help you, I would definitely tip the robot up on its side because you can go a lot more in and out. Kind of hard to do this without a second person, but I think this is still more effective than hitting the table every time. Okay, and you know what? I think that is good. So we have this full slot here. My strap is going to fit through that very easily, no problems. In fact, you know, maybe we overdid it with the 1/4-inch drill bit. But I mean, more or less, it had to be the size of the file. So that side is almost good. We know we're going to run this Velcro strap through there. And we don't want any sharp bits that could potentially, over time, cut into the strap. So I will do my best to, you know, you can do this with a file on the angle too. And then I think if I tip it up, I can deburr on the bottom side here. It's pretty good. I really want to use my right hand, but I flipped the robot up the wrong way for that. Okay. And this, it doesn't run super nicely, especially on the inside, because I wasn't able to file it all the way. But I don't have any more burrs there, or any major burrs there, so I think we're going to be kind of OK on that one. All right, let's go ahead and do the other side. So on this side, basically I'm going to start the same way. Of marking about 3 1/4 is the center. That's the center. If we go about 1 inch to 2 1/4, and then up to about 4 1/4. So something like that is what we're trying to do. Same thing we did on the other side, basically. All right, and then we'll drill again at the ends of the line that we made. Slide the wood over. All right, and then this time, we'll try to use the saw instead. So let's see, probably if I do this on a little bit of an angle, it will block the camera less, but we'll see. All right. So my goal is to just, oh, nope. It's going to hit the swerve module. We got to go more or less up and down. So I'm going to just try to cut on one edge, and then I'll cut on the other edge, and we should have a slot. And I probably still have to file it at the end, so let's give it a try. All right, that was, I think, easier than the drilling. Do I need to file that? It looks pretty straight to me, but again, hit the inside edges with a file a little bit. And now I'm going to tip it up and do some deburring as best we can. It's this bottom one here. OK, yep, that one's much cleaner. But either way is going to work fine. So we got our 2 slots done. Let's now tip this back down. And then the idea is the Velcro strap is going to go down across the bottom. And as long as we keep this tight going out for a match, it's not going to stick down more than some of the other, any of the rivets or bolt heads or things that are sticking down there. And then the battery goes in. And then we can bring one end over and just yank as tight as you can to pull the other end back across the top. And that, I think if I could hold onto the battery, I can lift the robot with that Velcro strap. It's not going anywhere. That looks pretty good. And then the bottom is sitting nice and flat. So if we look at the bottom here, that is, because it's nice and flat like that, you can even see, compared to, it does stick down a little bit more than the rivets, but I think it is probably not going to get caught on anything. Of course, if you do run into a problem and that is getting caught on the ground, on the ramp or something like that when you're going over it, then you can do the underneath the box trick that we talked about. Or there's one more way you can do it, which is on the side here where the Velcro comes through. Let's imagine it doesn't go through the bottom. But instead, if it's stopped here, you can still make this work if you take another piece of box or plate and you bolt that in really tightly on either side of it. So if you have a piece that kind of goes across, not paper, but of metal, maybe wood, that goes across like this, and you bolt that in or rivet that into the box, this is probably going to be tight enough that it can't pull out. So that could also potentially work for you. And in fact, if you go around, if you have something that you can go around too, and even kind of reattach to the rest of the Velcro, then that's going to do an even better job of kind of holding it there. But I think this way is the easiest way, and I think it should be okay. But you'll see in testing if you have to make any changes there. And then if it grabs just a little bit on the bottom, you might be able to get away with just adding some tape across the top of the Velcro that's on the bottom of the robot, right? If we took some slippery tape, because this section doesn't need to move, right? We could do a row of tape over here, and that would just at least keep it flat. So if you have any bits that are trying to bend out and be more prone to getting stuck on something, you could maybe fix that. All right. We have completely finished the chassis of our robot. We've got our fuel intake mounts done. The battery mount is done and ready to go. So we will have to still wire all of this up. But before we do that, we can also build our intake ramp and our fuel assembly. We'll do that in some of the next videos. But before we go, we're going to give another special thanks to Argosy. First, Cross the Road Electronics, West Coast Products, Aramco, and Team 302, Lake Orion High School, for hosting our studio.